Vlad Stir from Feedback Fruits for our presentation.
Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you so much, Sheila. Without further ado, I'm going to go on and share my screen and dive into our presentation for the day. Just confirming if someone can give a thumbs up. All right, and then everyone is able to see my screen. So today we're going to talk about utilizing pedagogical technology to facilitate feedback and evaluation in hybrid classrooms. We're going to briefly introduce you to Feedback Fruits, our standpoint to teaching and learning, especially during these times, as well as emphasize a study case that we documented with one of our partners. Now, as Jill and Sheila also mentioned, please feel free to drop where you're, say hello, say where you're from. Also, if you have any notes that you can share on what peer feedback activities you've done in the past in your courses would be wonderful. And of course, if any questions come up, feel free to drop them in the chat, raise the hand. We're more than happy to take them during the session. Also, just make sure I'm saying hello all the way from Amsterdam. Hopefully next time is going to be on site with OLC. And moving along, the core reason why we're here, because we see, it happened to me, probably to some of you as well, there's a big challenge in higher education, which is the engagement, because students get less and less engaged throughout their lectures, be it online, face-to-face, hybrid, flex, or whatnot. Now, a couple of studies that we read recently show that there's less student satisfaction in the learning post-COVID times. The students feel less engaged, but also there's fewer collaboration options for students, which ends up with them not fully completing their course, not fully getting the understanding and the value of what university is all about, what a degree is all about. And a side note to that is also linking to our presentation for today is that in a few discussions that I had in the past few weeks, there was always a note that what is teaching at the end of the day? What is a course? And the word that was most commonly shared by people we were in conversation with was feedback. And that feedback can be either from your peers, either from your faculty, either from your TAs, whatnot. There is no course and there is no learning without feedback. Now, these faculty are under distress, especially moving online, because there is an increased workload. They have to adapt to online transformation, to support different types of instructions, and we were not ready for it. The whole world was not ready for it. And that comes on with the support that we offer to faculty. So making sure that the pedagogies they were supporting in face-to-face can be supported as well in the online space. And the last concern that we see is the quality. An important element at the end of the day is how can we make sure that assessments are done the right way? There might be a need to change the assessment techniques or the approach we have, looking at authentic assessment, programmatic assessments. There's so many ventures that we can take in higher education, but there's not yet a go-to, so to say, assessment strategy that works universally for everyone. Now, digital transformation has been a challenge throughout history, no matter if you take it in higher education or other industries. But what we see is that online learning is a long-term educational path. Our biggest challenge is to ensure that educators have the right equipment to build sustainable courses online where they can keep their students engaged and have students attain to their learning outcomes. For today, what we'll focus is on small element out of the assessment and transformation in peer and group assessment in an asynchronous setting. At Feedback Fruits, we have a saying that we put pedagogy before technology, so we don't have technology car driving the horse, but we have the pedagogical horse driving the technology car. This is in our DNA, and we make sure we try to support those pedagogical scenarios. And our objectives are to look, especially in this growing interest from companies that hire more on skills to help universities facilitate those skill development, have more diversity in teaching and assessment, especially offering those right ways of engaging with students and have students take lessons they prefer, but also to make sure that there is still an interaction online between the students. Now, I would like to take a step back before continuing, and I'm curious if anyone in the audience would like to share a couple of thoughts on how you're targeting some of the elements of skill development or the diversity in teaching and assessment. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts? Oh. If there's no one, you can also leave it in the chat. Leave some of your thoughts in the chat, and we can discuss it further during after the presentation. All right. I think it's still early morning, so that's not a problem. Then we can move on. So why did we also choose peer assessment for today? It's basically a few reasons. First, we know that with peer-to-peer assessment, it's easier to develop higher order cognitive skills. So application, evaluation of different learning outcomes that students have to go through. Also, it enhances the motivation and autonomy of students, which is highly important these days, as more autonomous students can create more safe environments and provide bigger cultures of feedback throughout courses, throughout an institution. Another element is the interaction that you can keep between the students throughout the courses, but also it helps. It can be a logistical element to teaching because it helps with the efficiency. If done right, teachers can focus more on the right content, providing feedback on higher level skills, and continue improving deliverables of students or the way students collaborate with each other. Now, the core challenges that we see in the pardon me, we see when it comes to peer feedback assessment is that there's no one specific technology that facilitates it complete or the right way. Many times faculty have students deliver not just a piece of text or a Word doc, but it's also videos, audio recordings, so forth. But also what's important is the flexibility of how you actually set up criteria. What do you want your students to evaluate each other on? A scale, a rubric, an open feedback criteria, or just a combination of everything. And looking further than that, we look at grading because some of these activities can be graded. And now the last part is, all right, so if my students do everything and they provide feedback to each other, they get a grade for their participation or for the performance, but how can I as an instructor understand what are they doing? Are they actually learning with this process? Are they becoming better critical thinkers? Can they provide better feedback? So this proper insight is still missing, or based on our investigation, these elements are still missing. Now at Feedback Fruits, we have a complete suite of tools that supports course design that have effect on student engagement and learning outcomes. The focus of the day was the peer feedback and group member evaluation tools. So when it comes to peer learning in general, we see different types of assessment techniques that you can use. One is have real peer feedback activities where students evaluate each other, either individual or in groups on their deliverables to increase the quality of the report when you hand it in to the faculty at the end of the course. And the group evaluation, which enables understanding of the collaboration between students for group projects, try to spot and prevent free riders from actually getting an unfair grade at the end of the course. Now, some of the key elements that we highlight briefly here is what's important to make sure that the technology supports the pedagogy is, first of all, ability to have groups automatically sync from the LMS. That's always important, so you don't build up more work on the faculty end. Ability to work along with grading, how to help students to provide constructive feedback, as well as the visualization on the progress. Try to understand, like, are they actually learning? How do they actually learn? And of course, further elements like if you want to create a safe work environment and safe learning space, have anonymity involved. That can be just on the reviewer side, but it can be as well on the submitter side. Now, looking at the applicability of Feedback Fruits, we're working with various partners across the world in Europe, Australia, and the United States. For today, we have a use case that we documented with one of our do-tank partners, Deakin University, which focused on using the peer learning tools to improve group dynamics. And the most important challenges they had in their courses was that there's always some skepticism going on when it comes to group work. Students dread it. Some students dread it, some students love it because they can, well, if they're good collaborators, they can put their mark on the work. Another challenge is that there's always a diverse student background, which comes in with diverse personalities. So how can you deal with it to make sure that everyone is contributing to the certain extent? Free riding is something that we hear often. So there'll always be a couple of overachievers in any course, no matter where you are teaching right now. But there will always be those few that are trying to relay on the work of the others or of the group. So how can we spot and prevent it? Try to provide better feedback to students to help them grow and become better students. Now, the solution Deakin identified for this case is a combination of a peer review and group evaluation, ending up with a contribution grading at the end of the project for the students. So basically what they did, they introduced a peer review, peer feedback activity where students had to deliver their cases. And at the end of the course, they had a group review. So each students were reviewing each other within their groups to try to see, all right, what is their group contribution factor? So how did each student perform according to the average of the group, to try to spot, all right, who is doing more, who's doing less. Within, this is just briefly showing how the activity will look like through an LMS. So this briefly highlights the Canvas LMS and how feedback fruits displays within displays. Also the overview for the students. So what a student would see when they go through the feedback. And of course, one important element that you see, it's always students are guided. They know what's their progress, what they still have to do. When they're complete, they see that it's complete. And of course, trying to make sure that we're there every step of the way together with the faculty and the technology. Now, some feedback that came on from the interviews we had with the instructors and students is basically, here's what they had to do. So they finished the presentation, they gave feedback on the presentations at the end of the day, and then they reviewed the group performance. The instructor, so the role of the instructor in this case was to provide the instructions. This will always be the case, no matter if you're using or not using technology, instructors will provide the guidelines for what students are about to do. The next element is designing the feedback criteria, the rubric in this case, and to facilitate the reflection moment on all the feedback received. Now, the highlighted results that are important to show is that what the faculty saw is a big improvement compared to the previous semester on the soft skills of students and how they collaborate with each other because of the feedback they receive across the semester. There are more rich conversations, both on the content as well as on the collaboration of everyone, because we facilitate a social layer to the feedback side that gives space for everyone to discuss. And of course, faster learning for students because of the feedback that they were shared. Now, a reference point is the instructor gives overview provides an overview to the students on all their activities so they can show also how they grow across such activities and in the future for their course and how they attain to their learning outcomes. Right. On my side, actually, this is it. And I would like to turn it back to the audience, to everyone here, and try to see if you resonate with some of the words we're sharing today, and if you have any questions so far for us. I see Margaret unmuting. Perhaps you would like to ask
Yes,
a question?
glad it definitely makes sense to me to show that when they are working together with others, they're going to have richer discussions because they are engaging in a project with each other. So, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I've actually seen higher engagement when they are working together and the instructor is monitoring some of the activity. So it definitely resonated with me.
Thank you, Margaret, for the contribution. And I'm curious because you mentioned you had the experience. How do you still engage in activities with students on with peer review activities with students right now?
Yes, actually, we are, and this is with a non-credit program in continuing education, but actually this weekend I've been watching it for the last 4 weeks, where we are giving them some direction, but they are working together and doing peer projects, and we're giving them insight, but they really are extremely engaged, and it just really adds a lot to the actual class.
Thank you for that note. And I think also more people in the room would agree with you, because at the end of the day, also just going back to reflecting back on my studies and how I've been going through school. Some people just looking at my grade book at the end of the day, they'll say, this guy wasn't a good student. I tend to disagree. I didn't have straight A's. However, I still think that if I'm faced an exam or an assessment, a quiz right now with everything that I had before, I can still pass and probably even get higher grades. But what was important for me is that I was able to get some type of feedback, not only from the instructor side, but have others challenge me. What am I doing? As well as make sure that I am constantly improving and reflecting on what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, reflection will be key in my learning and in student learning, no matter what. What I'm curious, yes?
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. Do you have, could you talk a little bit about evidence that supports that the peer evaluation is truly authentic? I'm just thinking about experience that I've had with, especially with group work in online settings, and having peer evaluators, and everybody is great, right? And when you know, probably everybody wasn't great.
Thank you, Sheila, for the note and the question. Indeed, there are cases where you do one group assessment at the end of a course, and then you see that still everyone is great, but you still know it that not everyone is great. One of the works we've been doing, both with partners in the United States and Australia, is to see how you can actually implement these group evaluations on a scale that you help the students reflect to start off with before giving them a grade. So one of the important elements there in order to prove that there's an effect on the student learning and that autonomy is that you do not always have one activity, but you look into spreading the group evaluation across the course. So you'll do it 2 to 3 times. When you do it twice, is basically have formative activities where students share their feedback, prompting them that along the way, this final activity will influence their grade. Now, if you want to create a safe learning space, you can have everything done anonymously. So then students are feel more safe to provide honest feedback and honest reviews, be it quantitative or qualitative. And when you see more than 2 actual activities along the course, you can see the difference between the first, the second, and the third. Because the first one, there'll always be students that are doing, everyone is doing fine. If you look at the contribution factor, so how does each student perform related to the group average, all of them stand along the same lines. When you do it the second time, because it's halfway through the semester, they already start being more critical about the works of others and themselves. And when you do it the third time, that's when they become the most honest and give the most critical feedback to everyone, because they know it's their own learning and their own grade affected at the end of the day. So we do have as well a couple of references. We'll be able to share them via email as well to other faculty that have used it to briefly highlight it.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. I also see a familiar face that just joined the chat, Linda Lee. Wanted to say hello. Hope you're enjoying OLC, and it's great to see you today.
Let me try unmuting. Hello, good seeing you too. I'm glad to be able to join.
We were, Linda, we were actually just discussing about, well, the applicability on the peer evaluations and how does it affect authenticity and also student development. I'm curious if you, based on your experience and how you've approached it in some of your courses, if you can share perhaps with the audience a couple of notes.
Sure, I'll be happy to. I am the Director of Instructional Design at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and we use group work in probably half of our classes. We started using, we initially used a homegrown tool to provide students with a way to evaluate each other's work as group members, and we started using feedback fruits last year for that purpose and also for peer review. One of the things that we've noticed in the courses that use either group member evaluation or peer review is that when students are doing a lot of group work and they are frequently being asked to evaluate other group members, that as they have more experience doing that, and part of their coursework at Wharton includes collaboration, includes working within groups, and includes managing groups, that they actually get better at evaluating each other. They get more comfortable at evaluating each other, and with practice, as Vlad said, they do get past the point of saying just everything is great. So I would second Vlad's suggestion to provide students with more than one opportunity to evaluate each other, because when you get past that initial point, when you get past that initial experience of doing it, the likelihood of students being a little bit more forthcoming about issues that crop up increases.
Appreciate it, Linda. And I hope, Sheila, this also gives you an idea on the question that you asked. One element, because we still do have some time on the clock today, we're thinking to briefly showcase feedback fruits and how it works in one LMS, specifically the group evaluation tool. Have one of my colleagues, Abdullah, who's more than eager to do so. So if there are no other questions as of yet, I think it would be great to dive into a short demonstration. Oh, Abdullah?
Thank you very much, Vlad. Pleasure to see you all today, and lovely to see all these faces today in your morning, which will be our afternoon. So what I'll do is just go ahead and share my screen, and I'll show you just our group member evaluation tool, as Vlad had mentioned, within Canvas from a student's perspective, and then I'll hop into a teacher's perspective. Yeah, exactly. As Vlad had mentioned, group work tends to be quite a challenge that a lot of institutions face. A lot of students dislike it, and free writing is a constant challenge. And what we've seen is that faculty and instructional designers feel that there is no real foolproof method to evaluate the slacker versus the overachiever based on their contribution, which tends to result in avoidance of group work altogether. So perhaps we can showcase in how we sort of tackle that challenge through this particular tool. So what I'll do is right now head into the native Canvas environments, and yeah, so we can see in the assignment section a group member evaluation, I guess, assignment has been set up where students are evaluating each other within a group on their soft skills, and so subsequently they'll be evaluated based on contribution via actually an algorithm that we have that deducts from the slacker and also rewards an overachiever. So typically what we encourage is within this iframe here where feedback fruits is integrated, we would head into a full screen mode just to really remove some of those distractions. And I'll make this quite a high level little demo here just to for the purposes of time. First thing that we can see is actually, sorry, this is a student's as a teacher's perspective. There we go. So here we've hopped into a student's perspective now, and we will go into our assignments and then into our example. So hopping into the full screen mode, I can see that my name is Terry, and I have a 3-step process really that I have to do in assessing my peers. First thing would be to read the instructions. Then I would give feedback to myself. So there would be that self-assessment component within the group member evaluation. And then there would be a reflection step where we'd have to read and actually write a reflection. And then I can see kind of the grade that I've been provided. So first step would be to just head into a review, and I can see the progress that I've made. Now, based on these criteria of a rubric here, collaboration, problem solving, presenting, first step would be to provide a self-assessment on these different 4 criteria. So if we were to say, critical thinking, we would assess ourselves as good, and then we could also write a bit of qualitative feedback as well. So I could write some more feedback about myself and say, whatever I would like, choose to record my voice or attach as well, and put that as a suggestion or a compliment. And then once I've done that, I would do the exact same process for my peers in my group. And then again, based on the rubric, we can have a bit of guidance as to what critical thinking actually would mean in an excellent, for excellent really. And then just go ahead and do the same thing. So I would do that for, I guess, all my peers. And then once I've done that, I would just go ahead and head down to the 3rd and final step. And then there would be a reading and reflection step. Now I can see in the review overview, which looks very similar, where I've received reviews from my peers. I don't know exactly who, seeing as anonymity has been enabled from, it's been double blinded. Just to ensure that there's really that safe space for students to provide more authentic feedback to one another that can also be useful for future assignments, especially if this is a formative assessment. And I can also, if I wanted clarity, for example, I could go ahead and, so one of my peers had provided some feedback, and I could go ahead and, again, ask for clarification, like and reply, and just have that collaborative space to really develop the idea. Finally, once that's been done, we would have a reflection step where we would go ahead and write what we really learned. And what we had found through our kind of research was that with our partners is that upwards of 85% of students were not really reading the feedback that they had received. And so having a reflection step here really prompts the student to think a little bit critically about the feedback they've received. Because of course, in terms of real world skills, getting students ready for their career, learning how to give and receive feedback is an extremely integral part of how they'll be engaging in the real world. So there's, from our side, we have pedagogical thought behind each of the functionalities to ensure that. So that was it from a student's perspective. I'll just log into a teacher's perspective so we can see, how does the setup process look from that side. Is there any questions from anybody regarding the student side and how they're experiencing it, or any comments, thoughts, suggestions?
Yes, I have a question. Do you have to share the feedback with students? Can you turn that off? A lot of our faculty members like to review the feedback first, even though it's anonymous. So, because we use a tool as well, and the faculty member has the opportunity to either share anonymously or not share at all.
Thank you, Lisa, for that great question, actually. Yes, so the answer is yes, we do have a scaffolded deadline. So you can choose to withhold the feedback if the deadline, like before the deadline, or you can choose to manually make it available for the students. So you do have this flexibility. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. I have one more question, if you don't mind, because we use Canvas as well. So when the groups are created in Canvas, they're automatically set up to use this tool. So we have, faculty set up their groups in Canvas, and then if we were to use this tool, would the groups come with it, so they don't have to recreate the groups twice, because that's where the tool we're using now is forcing us to recreate the groups again.
Absolutely, yes. So to answer that question, we do have an integration, and there is we do push through the groups from Feedback Fruits to Canvas, so they would synchronize. Not only that, but also the grading and the calendars with a deeper integration would also synchronize, so that there wouldn't have to be double, double manual work on that side.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, I would love a link to all of this when it's over. I'll be contacting you guys.
Absolutely, sure, not a problem. Actually, just on that note, it's not just Canvas that we integrate with. We'd also integrate with Brightspace, Moodle, and Blackboard. So there is also flexibility at your institution. You don't use Canvas. So hopping into a go ahead.
Hi, this is Chris. Hi. Before you move on, I have a question on when you're doing the evaluations for your peers. Do you have to actually click on each one of those to see the criteria for that particular measure? I see that it comes up there after you've chosen it, but do you have to actually choose it to see that particular criterion? You know what I mean? What goes under that for example, if it's excellent, then it's you meet certain criteria there. So does that show automatically, or can you go back to that screen for just a second? You know what I'm talking about in the student view?
Yeah. I think I understand what you refer to. It's on the rubric, where if they click excellent, then they can get a description of what the requirement is.
Correct. Yes. When does that pop up?
So
when can you see that description?
So when you click on each criteria, if you were to put them as excellent, then you can see what would that entail.
Okay, so you have to actually click on that to see the actual description of. Okay, all right, thank you.
Exactly, yes. You're welcome. Great. So again, feel free to interrupt me as I continue. But as of right now, thanks for the questions, by the way. So now we're in the teacher's perspective, and again, I do encourage a full screen mode. And of course, there is a notification bell from the teacher and the students to see, what kind of activity has actually been happening, as of right now. First thing that you can see is, as a teacher, the groups that have been set up are all located here, and we can get an idea of, okay, where do people lie? So where have they read the instructions? Have they done the self-assessment? You can also download that for any kind of analytics. The instructions that you've set up, also shown here. And then regarding the rubric, we get this kind of heat map where we can get an idea of, based on all the criteria, where are the received reviews? So I can tell that I can tell that students have been doing quite well when it comes to collaboration and problem solving. However, presenting ability seems to be an issue or a challenge for students within the group. So this can also provide a bit of a compass and an idea of, okay, where should I focus on as an instructor during synchronous lectures. Perhaps problem-solving collaboration skills seem to be doing quite well, but I feel though I may need to emphasize presenting ability. So it does provide a bit of an idea of where the concentration lies as far as the criteria and where the students have been reviewed. Again, more analytics based on the given reviews that you can see here, also broken down on a student level. And again, there's also the received reviews analytics there. So you do get quite an overview as far as how long students are spending and also the comments that they're placing. And finally, this is really the part that I suppose this is where our algorithm comes in, and this is where we evaluate the slacker versus the overachiever, I guess automatically, is this final part here, the group contribution grading. So first of all, publishing the grades here, clicking that would just push that back into the Canvas gradebook or Brightspace, whichever the LMS you're using, so that it synchronizes there. Now on a group level, what you would do as an instructor is you would go down here and you see how the students have evaluated each other, right? So out of 12.5 percentage points, this is where students seem to be lying. So not too well on the presenting ability. Now it takes all these reviews and it spits out a group contribution factor. So what that does is it multiplies the group project grade to provide a suggested adjustment really. So we can see that here, Bjorn here has not done so well relative to the group. So his grade would decrease. Now, of course, you can override that and say, well, Bjorn was quite ill, so I'm not going to penalize him as much, and he'll only get a 4% deduction. So that really is how that kind of how that works, and this is provided by the algorithm. So oftentimes you wouldn't have to. Typically, what we see is it's on the student's onus to kind of speak up if a group member is free riding, or it's on the teacher's perspective to also supervise, which can be a little bit time consuming. Hence why we kind of have this algorithm to kind of take care of that perspective for you. Very quickly, just lastly, I'll jump into the edit mode to show you a little bit more about the kind of collaboration options from the teacher. This is how to set it up, the instructions, the Canvas groups, which I believe you asked previously, Lisa. This is where they would synchronize. And also to adjust the rubric. So we could add a rubric, scale rating, or comment criteria, and again, go ahead and set that up. And finally, we have the option to rate the reviewers, right? The reflection step can be possible or not possible, and this is where the scaffolded deadlines can be created. So that's all it really in a nutshell. Happy to, of course, dive deeper. This is one of our 9 tools that we have, and yeah, I guess we'll take some questions in our last few minutes here together.
Hi, Abdullah, this is Chris. I have another question on the creating the rubric. How customizable is that? Does it have to be unsatisfactory? We're gonna have faculty that want to do very specific things. So yeah, is it possible to customize that? And I'm seeing a nod, so.
Absolutely, yeah. So the criteria, the number of criteria, what it all means and the number of points assigned to it can all be customized and synchronized into Canvas rubrics as well, so that you do have that flexibility, of course, yes.
Okay, all right. And the reason I was asking about the student view of that is, as a student, a lot of times I want to see all of the criteria and what each one means before I actually have to click on one, but that doesn't sound like in the student view, it's a little bit different than what the faculty member will see. So, okay, thank you.
Exactly, so, yes.
I'm a big fan of having formative feedback occur a couple of times during a group project. Is there a way to associate this feedback, not necessarily with a grade, it may be the midpoint, but as an opportunity for people to correct maybe poor collaborative behavior, and then to be reassessed at the conclusion of the project, and then have that tie into Canvas?
Yes, that is a possibility. So what you see always that there's an option that you can add the grading element to it. However, if you do it midpoint, as you suggested, like to see if you can adjust, You don't have to add the grading element because you can always add it at a later stage, and that can be passed back onto Canvas as well once you add the grading to it. So you can do it formatively and then add the grades element to it, or just based on your review as an instructor or faculty, see what is the best intervention to help on the students.
Thank you.
Right. One thing that we promised Jill and Sheila as well at the beginning of the meetings that we'll give them 5 minutes to wrap up. I think they still have only 3 minutes. Everyone, thank you very much for the contributions. If there are any questions that are still left unanswered, feel free to type them in the chat or just reach out to us either later at the OLC or via email on our website. You can find us at any time. And yeah, we have that offer that Radostina also shared in the chat. So yeah, get in touch with us and we can dive more deep into your use case to see if there is a fit as well on these tools. Thank you very much, everyone. And again, Abdullah, the team, thank you so much for the contributions.
Thank you, Vlad, and thank you, Abdullah, for the very informative presentation. And thank you to the rest of the Feedback Fruits team for joining us.